Welcome in, everybody. Little Sunday night bonus edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Yes, for about, about the fifth straight weekend, we are doing live bonus content after doing like an hour to an hour and a half in the morning on Sunday. I got to stop doing these Sunday 11 a.m. Eastern shows because every single time I think that we are safe on a Sunday, something big happens, okay? So Brian Kelly has just been fired as the LSU head coach. So we're going to break it all down. If you are listening on podcast, it is worth noting, we're just going to put this at the front of the podcast. We talked about Texas A&M, LSU. We talked about the ramifications for Brian Kelly. And so I just bring it up because, listen, I'm doing the best to keep up with this news cycle as best as I can. Stuff is happening fast. I don't know what else there is to do. Every time I think that we might get a Sunday without some insanity, it just keeps on coming. There is so much going on. So everybody come on in because goodness gracious, there is a lot to discuss here on just an insane Sunday in the world of college football, okay? Before we get started, as mentioned off of the top, this will just be, if you're listening on podcast, this will just be pumped onto, just the full pod that we already did over the course of the day. We talked LSU we talked LSU, Texas A&M. We talked Mike Elko. We actually talked a little bit of college basketball. But Brian Kelly was officially fired just minutes ago. There is a team meeting that is set for the next few minutes, so that should be happening soon. And all I'm going to tell you is I'm going to give you what I know, the time that I know it, all of that. But man, oh man. Is there a lot to discuss? I'll tell you what, we're going live here. We're doing it in real time. I got to do something real quick. Hold on. Stay tuned. We're going to go ahead. Give me 1/2 second. All right. All right, I'm back. And there is a lot to discuss. Brian Kelly has just been fired as the LSU head coach. Okay, so everybody come on in. So let's just start from the beginning. First of all, I don't know what else there is to tell you. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, like what are you doing? Why are you not subscribed? We're just putting out content at a degree and a level, the likes of which the world has never seen. Okay, so one, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Apple, Spotify as well. Let's go ahead and dive in. Before we do, should mention that we are, of course, presented by SeatGeek. It is America's #1 ticketing app. Great news if you are an LSU fan. You can go back to LSU football games now. So if you need tickets to any concert, any show, this is what you need to do. You need to go to SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. And if you use promo code Torres, guess what? It gets you $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com gets you $20 off your first purchase. I am all over the place right now. SeatGeek.com, we appreciate their support. Promo code Torres. It does get you $20 off your first purchase. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So LSU and Brian Kelly. So I'll be honest, I'm fortunate enough, do this for a living, you know some people, whatever. And I thought even coming into the year, I thought things were probably a little bit more precarious at LSU than a lot of people did. This was the year. It had to happen. For people who don't follow the day-to-day, we've talked about it on the pod multiple times. But remember, Brian Kelly gets the job at LSU in the whatever it was. I guess it would have been the winter of 2021, okay? Year one was actually largely a success. 10 wins. You go to then the SEC championship game as the SEC West representative, okay? Year one feels like this huge success, but even year two, you started to see kind of the crumble in the foundation. That was the year Jaden Daniels won the Heisman Trophy. And if Jaden Daniels did not put up quite literally one of the best performances in the history of college football, LSU is probably a 6-6 team. And LSU should never be a 6-6 team, 7-5, 8-4, whatever. I've said it consistently on the pod. There are very few programs that legitimately have the right to believe that they should compete for the national championship every single year. And I do believe that LSU is one of them, okay? And so I just bring it up because year two, it was masked by Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors. Last year, they went 8-4, right? They get destroyed by Alabama at home. They lose to Florida and Billy Napier. And they end up, they finish the year at 8-4 overall. They win the bowl game to get to 9 wins, but nobody felt good about it. And so 2 off seasons ago, after Jaden Daniels left, we got to fix the defense. They go hire this guy, Blake Baker, highly touted defensive coordinator from Missouri. That gets solved for a little bit. The defense improves. But then last offseason, they went ahead and spent it was well known. Brian Kelly raised a bunch of money. To his credit, he went to the boosters. This is what I need. The boosters gave it to him. And it set up this season where it was all in. This season, you got to get it done right now. If you don't get it done, there are no excuses. There is no wait till year 5. This was the year where it had to all come together. You convinced Garrett Nussmeier to come back, and I think Garrett Nussmeier's always been overrated. Listen, I get a lot of stuff wrong. Picked Clemson to play for a national championship this year. But I've never bought the Garrett Nussmeier hype. But he comes back, you redo the entire receiving room, you redo the O-line room, and so it left zero margin for error. And listen, I'll say this. I think week 1, you beat Clemson, you feel good, and then all of a sudden, and I'll say this, we talked about it on the show, you start watching these games, you realize, Clemson might just not be very good. And like I said, I think you get to that Florida game. That was the game where Brian Kelly famously blew up on the reporter for asking about, struggling in an SEC opener. He said, you're selfish, you're this, you're that, whatever. But I really felt like going into that Vandy game. If you remember, Vandy opened as a favorite in that game. I said, Vandy's winning that game. And again, I get a lot of stuff wrong, but I picked Vandy to win. And as soon as that game went final, I was just like, this is not good because this is not what LSU is supposed to look like. Like, we've talked about it on the show consistently. LSU is a place that you're going to lose. Listen, nobody goes undefeated. Not in this era, not anymore. I know Oregon, regular season, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that LSU is a job where if it is going the way it is supposed to be going, you should never be in a situation where you get outclassed by anybody. I mean, go back to the years where Alabama could not get over the hump against LSU, right? And I bring it up or LSU could not get over the hump against Alabama. It was never that LSU wasn't good enough. It was just that Alabama was otherworldly. And even in those games, LSU, go back, Urban Meyer, when he talks about his time in the SEC, he talks about how LSU always had the most lethal, the most potent, the best rosters that he faced. Nick Saban would consistently tell you that LSU was the toughest opponent year in and year out. And that's not who they've been anymore. Last week, they get bullied by Vandy. Then on Saturday, they get bullied by Texas A&M. And so we talked about it on the morning show. If you missed it, go back and check it out. I encourage you to do it. But I just bring it up because to me, once you get bullied by A&M, you get bullied by A&M. The stadium is empty by the middle of the third quarter. It just felt like, I don't know if you could come back from that. And listen, we've always been very careful. Every school is kind of its own situation. But I have been told, even up until yesterday, up until Saturday, up until that Texas A&M game, that basically there was no situation where Brian Kelly was getting fired. It cost too much money, whatever. But I'll tell you this, though, is that I did feel like that changed with A&M. And the thing that I do think we're starting to see in this NIL portal era world that we live in is that at a certain point, people say, you can't afford a buyout. And listen, this is the most cliche thing to say, but I think there's some truth to it, is that at a certain point, you can't afford to bring somebody back. And that's where I think we got to with LSU, is it just got to a point where you're going to play another third of the season. You're 8 games in. You have 4 games left, including Alabama, Oklahoma, a couple other big games. You're going to play a quarter of the season, then go into an offseason, then try to convince people to buy season tickets, then expect people to donate. It was never going to happen. So I do think we are in this world where it's just, you can't, it gets to a point where people just are checked out. And I think fans, everybody wants to blame fans for everything. I think fans are smarter than they've ever been before. And I don't think fans generally are unrealistic. But LSU fans know what a championship roster looks like, what championship talent on the field looks like. That hasn't been it the last 3 or 4 years. Penn State fans, they know what it's supposed to look like, and it doesn't look like that, and it hasn't looked like that. They said, well, we want change. And so it felt like something was coming. But I'll be honest, when we did the show this morning, I didn't think anything was going to happen. And then you started to hear reports. I'll be honest, it's 8:36 Eastern time. I was out to like a late lunch, early dinner with my family. Shout out, I ended the show. My wife's uncle, it's his birthday today, so we just went out to lunch. And I started getting texts about this meeting that Brian Kelly had with Scott Woodward, the AD, okay? And so I bring it up because basically what I have been told, and once, and all the reporting's out now, but now that the reporting's out, it's like there was no way he was coming back from this, is that basically he had a meeting with the AD, his boss, and in the meeting, the boss was like, you got to go see it. He's like, not only am I not doing it, I want to fire these guys. And then the AD was like, nah, you ain't doing that. You're going to fire the guy I want you to fire. And it was this back and forth. It was super contentious. And then this is the crazy part. I'll tell you a quick side story. Driving back from dinner, like I said, with my wife, with her family, whatever, we had a great time. And I bring it up because on the way back from dinner, I'm explaining to her, I go, oh, the governor of Louisiana is involved right now. Like, crap is hitting the fan. Crap is crazy when the governor of Louisiana is involved in a coaching search at LSU. And so once I heard that him and Scott Woodward basically went at it, him and Brian Kelly, the head coach and the AD went at it. And once I heard that the governor is involved, and I heard, Brian Kelly basically just left the facility and was like, I'm not coming back. It's like, yeah, that's not getting solved. That's not we're going to sleep it off and everybody's going to come to the middle and have a good time. That's not what was going to happen. And so because of it, we are now in this situation where Brian Kelly is out. And so, it's shocking to me. It's stunning to me. But I'll also say this. Like, I don't know that it really is that stunning. When you know how much that they put into that roster, when you understand how much, what the expectations are. And here's the other thing. When you understand that Brian Kelly never jived with that fan base and with that athletic department. Like, listen, Scott Woodward brought him in, but like the fans never really bought in. I give LSU fans credit. They're like, he's not one of ours. We don't believe in him. We don't trust him. We don't like him. We don't this, we don't that. It was like, just felt like a powder keg. Like, it was just one of those things where it's like, oh, this is not going to get better. And like I said, when I started hearing about him and the AD had a blow up and the AD was demanding this and he was refusing and he was demanding this and the AD wouldn't listen, I was like, oh, it's bad. And then you see a report, and I can't take credit for this report, but I think it was Matt Moscano was the first one from down in Baton Rouge that said like, oh yeah, the governor is involved. And once the governor gets involved, I thought this was interesting as well. The governor basically said, yeah, the money is not that big of a deal. It's going to cost $100 million to buy out Brian Kelly and his staff, and the money is not an issue. So I don't know what kind of state coffers they're pulling money from to get Brian Kelly his buyout, but here we freaking are. So Brian Kelly is out. It is just surreal. There's so much to discuss and so much to talk about. By the way, Tito's Vodka, you need to be a presenting sponsor of this show because, my best friend's been Tito over the course of the last 4 or 5 months last 4 or 5 weeks, because this offseason's been crazy. This season's been crazy. Florida, new coach. Penn State, new coach. Arkansas, new coach. Oklahoma State, new coach. Oregon State, new coach. I mean, listen, I don't think it's wrong or incorrect to say there are not enough good candidates for all these jobs. But what I would also say is this, is that LSU, I think, goes to the top of the pecking order. And we are talking about, 3 of what I would argue to be the 10 best jobs in college football are now open, are now available. Listen, this is what we're going to do. I'll tell you what. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. When we do, we got to talk about who are candidates at LSU. By the way, if you guys have thoughts on candidates, I already see Luke is in the chat. Luke, interesting name. Yes, Peyton, by the way, he says Torres is rocking the Tyson shirt. Yeah. I mean, I was out to dinner. I thought my night was done. I thought I was chilling. I thought I was having a good time. I thought this was just going to be a nice, easy evening at the house. And instead, sure enough, here we go. It is just crazy that this thing happened and that this thing happened in the manner that it did. So I'll tell you what, this is what we're going to do. We're going to come back. When we do, we'll talk candidates because I already see a couple names in the chat. This is going to get crazy. What does it mean for all the other jobs? We'll take a quick break, come back, and we got to go ahead and talk candidates. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Collie Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Collie Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. ColliePuffs.com gets you 15% off. Collie Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but ColliePuffs.com, ColliePuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Collie Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So we are going to, in just a minute, get to some candidates for the LSU coaching job. I cannot believe this puppy is open. Before we do, I got to figure out this. There we go. It was killing me not being able to figure out what is going on with this ticker. It drives me crazy. So let's go ahead and talk candidates. Before we do, you know what I got to do? I got to thank our friends. I got to thank our hotel partners and casino partners, Circa Sportsbook, Circa Casino. Okay, so listen, bottom line, Circa's amazing. Okay, so if you're going out to Vegas and you need a place to watch games and you want a place to just hang out, to just do whatever, Circa's the best place in Vegas. But here's the crazy part, is that I know a lot of you can't get out to Vegas. Well, guess what? Circa has just opened up a new sports book, Mid-Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. I love the Circa Sportsbook in Vegas, but I cannot wait to get out to the one in Franklin, Kentucky at Mid-Kentucky Downs. All the same hospitality, all the same. It's literally a replica of the world-famous Circa Sportsbook in Vegas. You got to check it out. It's about 40 minutes from Nashville, right on that Kentucky-Tennessee border. And as I said, driving distance from Indiana, driving distance from Ohio. And oh, by the way, here is the good part. The good part is that, you know what? Torres is going to get down there. I don't know exactly when, probably during college basketball season, maybe as early as December. Cannot believe, by the way, college basketball is literally like 2 days away here, or a week away here. I'm actually, as we speak, I got the Duke-Tennessee game on in the background. Cannot believe how quickly college basketball is coming. Cannot believe it. We appreciate your support. Thank you to Collie Puffs. Thank you to Circa Sportsbook. And as I said, I will be going down there soon. All right, let's go ahead and talk coaching candidates. I should mention a couple things really quickly. First of all, SeatGeek.com. Again, if you are an LSU fan and you're like, you know what, I could go to football games again. Well, guess what? SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. Also, if you're an LSU fan, make sure you're following our LSU-specific Twitter page, Torres on LSU, for all your late-breaking LSU news. All right, so Brian Kelly officially fired. That means it is time to talk coaching candidates, and it is time to talk about what I believe is one of the best jobs in college football. Okay, so let me say this. I think there is, to me, I would argue this to my death. I would argue that there are 3 jobs, in my opinion, that are better than every other job in college football. In other words, they have everything you need, starting with, and I still think this is the most important thing you can have, which is a natural recruiting base, and ideally a natural recruiting base where a lot of other people aren't recruiting, okay? Everyone's going to talk about the portal era, NIL. I get that. you still need a baseline of 20 to 25 high school players a year. And so I bring it up because guess what? LSU is second to none. We all know the stats. Louisiana produces more NFL players per capita than any state in America. And so when I look at all these jobs, resources, money, facilities, recruiting base, want to win, stadium atmosphere, fan base, I think in some order, it is LSU, Georgia, and Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't had a real coaching search in about 15 years. Georgia opened, and we knew it was going to Kirby Smart. So that shows you how rare it is that these jobs open. But now that LSU is open, I think basically everybody's in play. I mean, listen, every single coach in America isn't going to take that job. But I think, I've heard Josh Pate say this. I think he's 100% right. I think there are people that we wouldn't think are even interested in coaching college football that would sprint to be the LSU head football coach. And so let's go ahead and dive into some candidates. I got about 4 or 5 right off the top of my head. And I think the first one is the obvious one. It's the name that, listen, if you are a fan of any school, this is the number one candidate available. And I do believe that with the right contract, the right approach, the right this, the right that you can get him. I think it's Lane Kiffin. I mean, listen, Lane Kiffin, we've talked about so much with the Florida job. The bottom line with Lane Kiffin is this. I know everybody's doing this thing of, well, Lane Kiffin, he's never been happier and he's doing hot yoga and his daughter's on campus there. Okay, I get it. But guess what? This was a dude that 3 years ago was going to take the Auburn job, okay? And so if you were going to take the Auburn job, you mean to tell me you're never going to leave for another job? If you were to take the Auburn job, I'm sorry, but that makes you a candidate for Florida. It makes you a candidate if Alabama ever opens again. If Ohio, pick the best jobs in America. If Sark goes to the NFL and Texas opens, that makes you a candidate immediately. And so I don't want to hear all this, Lane Kiffin, he's never been I don't care. When LSU calls, you have to listen. You just have to listen. And so to me, he's the number one candidate. If you can get him, it's no doubt about it. It's blank check. Apparently, money is no issue. Again, producer Matt is off for the evening. But I would have him pull up that Matt Moscana tweet because Matt Moscana said that money is not an issue for LSU in this coaching search. And so to me, you look at it, you sit there and say, well, wait a second. If money is of no issue to LSU, then if they're going to pay $100 million in buyouts to Brian Kelly and his staff, you know what that means to me? That means that guess what? It means that all of a sudden money isn't an issue with hiring the next head football coach. And so if money is no issue, then Lane Kiffin has to be your number one call. Now, I think the issue with Lane Kiffin, and let me even backtrack, because I think the biggest issue with LSU that I'm going to be fascinated going forward, who is going to be making the hire? Because right now we found out today that Brian Kelly and Scott Woodward, the AD, blew up at each other, and that basically the governor of the state of Louisiana had to get involved, okay? And so I just bring it up because if Scott Woodward ultimately didn't make the firing, I'm going to call it something crazy. That probably means to me that Scott Woodward is not making the hiring of the next head coach as well. So I do think that matters. But again, ultimately, if you're willing to pay $100 million and it gets so crazy that the governor of your state is getting involved, guess what that means to me? That means to me that you are pretty comfortable in basically spending whatever it takes to get the right head football coach. So if you're going to spend $100 million to buy out Brian Kelly and his staff, I'm sorry, but Lane Kiffin, whatever it costs, you're going to try and go after him. I'll be curious. There's all sorts of reports on Lane Kiffin. There was a report late last week that Florida has already offered him $13 million a year to be the head coach. We don't know if it's true. I think the other thing with Lane Kiffin that is super duper obvious with Kiffin is, he could be coaching into the college football playoff. We talked about it on the show this morning. We talked about the fact that with Lane Kiffin, you're probably at this point realistically going to be waiting until what? Almost Christmas time if he makes the college football playoff. The opening round of the college football playoff is the weekend before Christmas. December 20th is the Saturday, okay? Well, guess what? LSU season is going to end on November 28th. The regular season is anyway, and it's no different than Florida. It's no different than a lot of these places. What do you do? How do you handle it? What is the situation? What are you going to do? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to know that Lane Kiffin is going to say yes to your job if you're going to wait that long. And so for people who are not following, Ole Miss is right now 7-1 through 2/3 of their season, through 66% of their season. They still have South Carolina. They stink. The Citadel, they stink. Florida, interim head coach, they stink. And at Mississippi State. And so if Ole Miss goes 10-2, so all they have to do is go 3-1 in their final four, and they should with South Carolina, Citadel, and Florida at home and Mississippi State on the road. Guess what? They go 3-1. They're going to the college football playoff. They go 4-0. They might be going to Atlanta and getting a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. And so I just bring it up because if you're LSU, can you wait that long? I don't know. But to me, I think Lane Kiffin has to be the number one candidate. I'll tell you this, if I was doing a pecking order of jobs, I think LSU's got to be ahead of Florida. I really do. This is actually kind of a worst case scenario weekend for Florida. Florida, they don't play. Lane Kiffin beats Oklahoma, which means that they're 7-1. You were kind of hoping he was going to lose this game so that hopefully he would fall to 6-2, maybe miss the playoff. Now he's not missing the playoff. He's not whatever. And I think it's really bad. Remember, by the way, if you're an LSU fan, follow our Torres on LSU account. Let's get to a couple other names. Listen, I think the other, there's a bunch of names that make sense to me. So I will be quick. If Lane Kiffin says no, is there that home run candidate? Now, again, I think there might be people out there that we don't really think of as candidates that might be interested. By the way, no, I don't think Dan Lanning's leaving. No, I don't think Ryan Day's leaving, etc. But as far as everybody else is concerned, I'm trying to think of candidates off the top of my head. One, I saw Luke in the chat reference John Summerall. He's right down the road at Tulane. Fun story on John Summerall. John Summerall will be joining the Aaron Torres pod on Monday night. We actually interviewed John Summerall a few days ago. And John Summerall, basically, we talked mostly about the Tulane situation, but I did ask him, how do you handle being pursued by other schools? So John Summerall I talked to late last week. Luke referenced John Summerall, and I think, listen, I'll say this. Again, it's hard to know who is actually a legitimate candidate. This is Luke's comment. Seems like Summerall to LSU is a given. That's the best SEC opening by a mile. It's better than Florida, better than Auburn if it comes open. So a couple things. One, if you're not familiar with John Summerall, like the dude, like if you know the resume, whatever, you're going to want to stay plugged into the Aaron Torres pod on Monday because we're going to talk to him probably about 6 p.m. Eastern time. He's impossible not to like. And I'll just give you a little preview. Like, he gave me big Dan Lanning vibes. Like, younger guy, defensive guy, confident in who he is, not afraid to be whatever. And oh, by the way, the guy wins, right? So John Summerall right now, Tulane is 6-1. They play UTSA on Thursday night. But keep in mind, they beat Northwestern earlier this year. Northwestern right now is 5-3. They're a good football team. Duke, they beat Duke. So they're a good team. Defensive culture, he's in that state. Now the big question becomes, is that somebody that basically, I guess for lack of a better term, is he quote unquote a big enough name? I'm not saying, I'm just saying I don't know if he's a big enough name. LSU a few years ago didn't think Lane Kiffin was a big enough name. Now again, Scott Woodward was making the hire, so I feel like that was a little bit of a different situation. But I just bring it up to say that I don't know. I'll be very curious to see if that is somebody that LSU would potentially be interested in because, again, great coach. I just don't know if he's a big enough name in this era. Keeping it going, I see a lot of people referencing this name, and I think this is a totally fair name, James Franklin. Again, I don't think it's where LSU wants to go, but say what you want about James Franklin. He's been in the SEC and won at Vandy. Oh, by the way, never forget, he not only won at Vandy, but guess what else? He went to the Big Ten. He consistently had a top-tier program. I'd be curious, the one thing I'll say about James Franklin, after the Brian Kelly era where everybody hated the coach, I kind of do think like James Franklin would just bring some positive vibes to the room, right? Like you can criticize James Franklin for whatever. At least the guy is enjoyable. At least people like him. At least people enjoy being around him. And so maybe James Franklin does make sense. Now there's positives and there's negatives, and everybody knows what the negatives are. The negatives are, is this a guy that is going to elevate you beyond good to great, beyond good to national championship? The reason Brian Kelly is not the head coach, besides the fact that he's a stubborn pain in the you-know-what, is because Brian Kelly, it's basically like nobody wanted to deal with him, and he wasn't going to be the guy that got them to the place that they wanted to go. And where they wanted to go was national championships. And so I only bring it up because, put simply, is that like, if Brian Kelly wasn't good enough, I don't know if James Franklin would be. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just saying out loud. But James Franklin is a guy that you absolutely have to call. And I think if you don't get Lane Kiffin, listen, I think you do a lot worse. And oh, by the way, here's a great thing with James Franklin. And I know LSU isn't trying to pinch pennies on the pinch pennies? Did I say pinch pennies? Pinch pennies on the next hire. By the way, I apologize. I'm just a total mess right now wearing my Tyson Chicken shirt as I'm talking LSU football right now. But I just bring it up because, is James Franklin a big enough name? A couple other names that come to mind. A couple people have mentioned in the chat. John Gruden wants to coach college football. I don't think John Gruden can be your first call. I don't think John Gruden can be your second call. I will say this, though, is that if we are living in a world where LSU is already open, Arkansas is already open, Florida is already open, Auburn, I'll be honest, if Auburn lost to Arkansas the other day, I think that job might be open. I think Kentucky is going to be open. I mean, that's 5 coaching jobs. John Gruden said he wants to coach in the SEC. And as we talked about a minute ago, there are not enough good jobs for there are not enough good coaches for all of these jobs. And so I just John Gruden is going to get one of these jobs if he wants it. Maybe, I mean, he said he would die to coach in the SEC. I mean, I don't know. I'm not as anti-Gruden as everybody else. I understand people saying he's never coached in college football. Look at Belichick, whatever. I think Gruden's different. I think recruiting is all about connecting with people. There might not be a person on planet Earth that connects better with people than John Gruden. I mean, everybody loves him. Everybody watches his little videos on social media of the unboxings and the this and the that and whatever. I think he would be a dynamic recruiter. Now, I think with John Gruden, a couple things. One, and this is where LSU is kind of interesting. LSU already has the infrastructure in place. They have a great quote-unquote front office. They have great personnel people. And it's in a state that kind of recruits itself. Like, listen, if Brian Kelly, go back to, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, I think they signed 9 out of the top 10 players in the state of Louisiana, and people don't even like Brian Kelly. So it's like, you get John Gruden, the talent that dude could bring in is just absolutely insane to me. And so I think John Gruden is another name that has to be considered. You want a total wild card that I would call? And I don't think it's that crazy. By the way, again, Tito's, if you're watching, Tito's is helping me get through this college football season. They used to say America runs on Duncan. Torres, after about 6 p.m. Eastern, runs on, maybe not 6 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. America runs on Duncan. Torres runs on Tito. So Tito, give me a call, Uncle Tito down in Texas. By the way, if Texas opens up, Tito's is actually in Austin. So that sponsorship might make too much sense. All right. The name that I don't personally think is too crazy. Again, the issue becomes who is making the hire. And I hate to keep going back to this, but I think it is just so important to note that these things all matter. Who is making the hire? But a guy that is well overdue for a head coaching job, who I think is overdue, and who, oh, by the way, would have the support of some of the most prominent LSU alums, most of them from the 2019 championship team. It's that Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, okay? So listen, we all know Joe Brady's resume. Joe Brady was I guess he was technically the passing game coordinator the year that LSU won the 2019 national championship. He is overdue for a head coaching job. Now, I have said for 2 years, I think that the Bills should fire Sean McDermott and hire Joe Brady. But I just bring it up because to me, that's a wild card that I think makes sense. He knows the school. He knows the administration. He is going to have support from people that matter in that broader community. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. You think they won't go to war for Joe Brady? I kind of think that they probably would. That's a name that I would call. And again, now he left because he wanted to get back to the NFL, because he wanted to be a pro coach. Well, guess what? There's not that much difference between pro and college. And I guess the question for me becomes pretty straightforward. Do you want to take an NFL job where you're not put in position to succeed? I keep going back to this. If you're one of these NFL head coaches, if you're a hot candidate, don't take a job where you don't have a quarterback, right? Like I was watching, I was flipping around. I'm not going to lie and say I was watching it. The Jets won today. Congratulations. Aaron Glenn was a hot candidate for years. Then he gets to the Jets. They have no quarterback. He's relying on Justin Fields. Justin Fields up until today wasn't good enough. And all of a sudden he's 1-7. And so if you're Joe Brady, like, are you going to stay in Buffalo forever? Because they're clearly not going to fire Sean McDermott if you can't get past the Chiefs. They're just not doing it. But then counter to that, how many NFL jobs are you going to want that are going to become available? Maybe the Titans with Cam Ward. I don't know. But what I do know is you go to LSU, you're going to have your handpick. You're going to be able to recruit any quarterback you want, any high school player you want, any receivers that you want. And then, oh, by the way, just go get some dude on, go get some $3 million defensive coordinator and let him run the defense. No different than what Lincoln Riley does with Dan Lynn, what Ryan Day does with Matt Patricia. Just go get like a $3 million defensive coordinator. Who cares? LSU spending $100 million to buy out Brian Kelly. Who cares how much you're spending on a defensive coordinator? So to me, I think he's the total wild card. And I will give you the ultimate wild card that will say no. But I'd make the call. So Torres, sometimes this little noodle right here, there's some things that I think of that people make fun of me in the moment. So if you go back to SEC Media Days, in the moment, do you remember the big story out of day one of SEC Media Days? Greg McElroy. Yeah, I've heard that Nick Saban's getting the itch to coach again. And everybody was trying to pick, okay, would he take Florida? Would he take this job? Would he take that job? Would he come back for this? Would he come back for that? And I remember saying this. I said, I think there's one job that Nick Saban might actually be interested in, because Nick Saban's not coming back to a job where you have to rebuild. Nick Saban wants to walk into a place that's good enough to win, and Nick Saban he's not coming back. But hypothetically, if he were going to, he's going to want to walk into a place. He left Alabama ready to win a national championship. Clearly, Kalen DeBoer might do it in year 2, largely, and I don't want to disrespect what Kalen DeBoer's done, but with a lot of Nick Saban's players. So he's not going to some place that's a total rebuild and a train wreck, okay? But LSU, he's going to walk in. He'll have a top 5 roster in the SEC next year, top 3 roster in the SEC next year. By year 2, with the same touch, you could have a national championship contender. So I don't think Nick Saban's coming back to college football, but I said it in August. I said if there was one job that I actually think he would at least have to consider, it would be LSU, because like I said, I think it's one of the 2 or 3 best jobs in America. It is worth noting is that I do think it's worth noting that what was I going to say? I lost my train of thought, man. Whew. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. I'm going to read the chat right now because I do want to see if there's any names that I might have missed. This is interesting. LSU. Okay, this I can't even understand this. Let's go. So Pat Turnbow says John Gruden will be a winner wherever he goes. We'll see. I don't know about that. I don't hate it. I think Luke has the most important question. Is Scott Woodward, is he going to get canned too? It sure does feel like it. I've heard, listen, Matt Moscana's tweet said it all. He said the politics at LSU, the politics in Louisiana are crazy. All I know is when the governor's getting involved, not good. I've heard the governor and Scott Woodward do not get along. I mean, it shows you how important LSU athletics is to the state when the governor cares about what the AD is doing. But yes, to Luke's point, I don't think Scott Woodward's going to survive. But even if he does, Scott Woodward is the AD, by the way. And you know, like, I don't know. If he keeps the job, I don't get the sense that he's going to have much say going forward. By the way, this is like the new thing that nobody's talking about. All these jobs are opening up, and I don't know how many ADs actually have the final say on the hire. I can promise you at UCLA, Martin Jarman does not have final say on who he's hiring. That's the AD. Florida, I've been told mixed things on if Scott Strickland, the AD there, has final say on his hire. Arkansas, I've heard mixed things on if Hunter Yurachek has final say on his hire. So you go on down the list. I don't know how many ADs are even being allowed to make the hire. And then to Luke's point, even if Scott Woodward is not fired, I would have to imagine that I don't think he has final say. By the way, there is a lot of John Gruden talk in the chat right now. So, by the way, Blind Vegan Rescue Baby tells me Coach O had a lot of personality too. How'd that end up for LSU? LOL, guy thinks personality means you win. I mean, Ed Orgeron won a national championship, right? With maybe the greatest team in the history of college football, right? I'll take Coach O with personality over Brian Kelly with no personality. We'll see how that went. So, Blind Vegan, you really might be blind. No disrespect. I hope you're not. I hope you're not blind. But you might need to mix some, might need to mix some red meat into that diet because if you can't see that Coach O was better than the guy they just hired, I can't really help you. Let's see here. Take It Toll House says, honestly, no way they should have fired Brian Kelly in this environment. So listen, I get it. It's one, we did this segment on my Fox Sports radio show. I'm torn only from the perspective that I get it, but I also get the other side too. I didn't think LSU was going to fire him, and the buyout is so much. But I also understand this argument that you cannot, if you bring back Brian Kelly, what do they, let's look at LSU's schedule. They have a bye this coming week, and then they play Alabama, right? So I bring it up because let's look at LSU's schedule. So LSU is back at home in 3 weeks against Arkansas. So they play Arkansas on November, what day is this? November 15th. I mean, you can say they shouldn't have fired Brian Kelly, but what are you going to have, 60,000 people in a 100,000-seat stadium? People aren't coming to support Brian Kelly. And then you're going into next year. Like, what do we, can you do it? Can you bring him back? Can you see season ticket sales go down? Listen, it's so funny. I go back to, if you guys remember, Wes Moore was on this show a few weeks ago. Wes Moore was the reporter in Arkansas that broke the John Calipari story. But he was talking about Sam Pittman, the day that Sam Pittman was ultimately his last game against Notre Dame. And he said it was against Notre Dame. What was it? Arkansas fans, you would know. What was it, like 42-13 at halftime, something like that? And I bring it up because the thing that Wes Moore said stuck with me like freaking gangbusters. He said, listen, I left the stadium. He said probably 30,000 people poured out of the stadium at halftime. He said if 10,000 of those people got one beer, a beer's $10. $10 a beer times 10,000 people, that's 100,000 people that you just lost, boom, just from people walking out of the stadium. And that's if they got one beer, 2 beers, 3 beers, 4 beers, hot dogs, merchandise, whatever. And so you think about LSU, 100,000 people. Imagine if 40,000 people just don't show up the next time that they take the field. The amount of money that you're going to be losing. Now, I understand tickets are already paid for, and I understand all that. But even game day revenue, even merchandise, even hot dogs, even beer, so it's just like, so again, let's take LSU, let's take Tiger Stadium. We know what LSU fans can do in a situation where alcohol is being served. Let's just conservatively say $10 a beer. Let's say 50,000 people get 2 beers. Not great at math, but 50,000 people times 2 beers, that's $20 per person. 50,000 people getting 2 beers. Let's just do that conservatively. What is the math on that? $250,000? I mean, it's like that's what you're losing just in beer sales by not bringing back Brian Kelly. Was that math even close to right, by the way? I'm sorry. It's 9 o'clock Eastern time. I'm trying to think. If you had 50,000 people get 1 beer at $10 a beer, 50,000 times 10 would be 500,000. So it'd be $1 million that you just lost in beer sales. If half of the stadium is averaging $2 beers per person at $10 a beer, maybe the beers are a little more expensive. Maybe the stadium averages more than 2 beers per person. Then you think about ticket sales. Then you think about the revenue that it creates for the community around LSU. By the way, that math I think was terrible off the top of my head, but you get the point. I mean, you're talking about potentially tens of millions of dollars in revenue that you're going to lose by bringing back Brian Kelly. By the way, B99, great call, says Clark Lee should be on a lot of these lists. I agree. To the point that a lot of people are making in the chat, I don't know if Clark Lee will leave at Vandy. I also think it's worth noting with Clark Lee, I think people are fairly saying, what is this guy going to be in a post-Diego Pavia world? I think that's fair as well. But the counter to that is that I get it. I get it. I'd just be curious to see what Clark Lee is once Diego Pavia leaves. I understand Vandy's his alma mater, but I also think if I could make a call, I'd probably do it. Man, what a great listen, this is a name. I had so many people when I did the Florida one. I had so many people say, why is Brent Key, the head coach at Georgia Tech, not more of a serious candidate? And he should be. And I probably should be including him. Brent Key, head coach at Georgia Tech. I think the only issue with him, I mean, he's a stone cold winner. I think the only issue with Brent Key is pretty straightforward. It's like Lane Kiffin. Georgia Tech's 8-0. Listen, I don't know if Georgia Tech can get in to the college football playoff if they lose a game. But goodness gracious, if they were to get in, now you're talking about basically Christmas time until you can make a hire. So it's just one of those deals, man. It is just a crazy coaching cycle. And I do think the theme, and I think it's totally fair, is are you going to be – there's so many good jobs and there's only so many good candidates. I'll tell you what, man. I really thought we were in a world where, we were done handing out these crazy raises and these crazy buyouts and these crazy contracts and whatever. But if you think about all the coaches that are either going to get huge raises from this coaching carousel or huge raises from their current school, basically being able to renegotiate their contracts, it's going to be bananas. I remember 2021. That was the year that Brian Kelly did take the LSU job, that Lincoln Riley did take the USC job. But there were also a lot of other coaches that got raises that did not leave. James Franklin got a raise at Penn State, did not leave. Dave Aranda, don't forget, got a raise at Baylor, did not leave. So it is just absolutely crazy. I'll get to a couple more questions that I'm going to get out of here. I was just at the freaking Sizzler, just trying to have a good time. By the way, Luke, thank you for keeping me up on the college hoops. Luke, for a guy that claims that you don't like college hoops, man, you sure do know a lot of what's going on. Tennessee and Duke right now are playing. As Luke just texted me, Tennessee is down by 3. Duke has the ball with 36 seconds to play. Let's get to some of this. All right. Let's see here. Torres, you're out of your mind if you think Coach O's body of work is better than Kelly's. Are we talking about LSU or are we talking about totality of their careers? I don't really care about what Brian Kelly did at Grand Valley State. At LSU, Coach O won an SEC championship and a national championship in 4 years. This was year 4 for Brian Kelly. Sorry. Blind vegan. Again, we got to get you some glasses. You're like Wild Thing Vaughn. We got to get you some glasses. We got to get you a red steak. You're wrong on this one, buddy. You're wrong. Let's see. Ooh. Clark Lee, Kalani Sitake. Goodness gracious. Our BYU crowd will not be happy with Kalani Sitake. By the way, this is a great one. Guy Davis. We've talked so much about LSU, Penn State, Florida. Guy Davis brings up a great point. Aaron, the same thing's going on in Tallahassee right now. How much can they afford to lose keeping Norvell? Listen, Guy, it sounds like you're a Florida State fan. Florida State was on a bye this weekend, but let's go ahead and look it up really quick. Let's go ahead and look up Florida State's next home game and see what ticket prices are. And think about, again, what it does to the economy when the football team stinks. So Florida State is back at home on Saturday against Wake Forest. It is $10 to get into the stadium. It is $10 to get into the stadium. So you do math. Let me just really quickly off the top of my head, I'm using SeatGeek here. Let me see if it tells me how many tickets are available. Let's just see here. I mean, there's hundreds of tickets available. Hundreds of tickets available. So you start talking about the amount of money that is being lost, the amount of money that isn't being spent on food, the amount, and like, I get that not everybody can win big every year, but Brian Kelly in year 4, it's just not going right. And I think the other thing too, when he's being so stubborn that he doesn't want to start making coaching changes, your team's a train wreck, bro. Your team is a train wreck. So I think it's a great point on Mike Norvell. We might not be done with the big name coaching hirings. And again, I just go back to how many jobs are going to open, and then, how many good coaches are going to be available. All right, Blind Vegan, we're friends now, and I'll tell you why. He says, Chad Morris back to Arkansas. He's learned from his mistakes. Blind Vegan, I will tell you a funny story. I don't know if everybody else's phone is like this, but does anybody else's phone do the, do you remember when? Basically, it's like, hey, 5 years ago this happened, 3 years ago that happened, whatever. I had an alert on my phone today. It was like 5 years ago this happened, and it was Chad Morris. I used to call it, so my mic I need to keep close to my face. But Chad Morris had do you remember the play sheet that was like that big? And I used to call it the Waffle House menu. I said, Chad Morris and his Waffle House menu. It was like 5-6 years ago to this day that I took that picture, and what a clown that guy was. Let's see here. The only person that'd be dumb enough to take the LSU job is Jimbo Fisher. Tell you what, the only person that'd be dumb enough to hire him is Scott Woodward. Scott Woodward tried to hire Jimbo Fisher at LSU. Remember, he didn't want Brian Kelly. He wanted Jimbo Fisher. And then Jimbo Fisher got that big extension from LSU, from Texas A&M. Take it to the house. Says, I congratulate LSU on hiring Mac Brown. Mac Brown might be able to get – I'll tell you what. Coach O's getting back in this year. Jimbo, I think, is all of a sudden now going to get a job. There's just somebody – guy won a national championship. I wouldn't hire him. I'll tell you this. This might be a good segment for like the middle of the week, but I will tell you, Gruden, Coach O, Jimbo Fisher would be a distant third behind those guys. I think Coach O would probably be number 1. I think Jimbo Fisher would be – or what's-his-face would be number 2. All right. Let's see here. So Duke won this basketball game. Baba Booey says, any thought on Hugh Janus to UCLA? I'm not familiar with Hugh Janus's game. Hugh Janus, I'm not familiar with his game. I certainly think he would create some buzz in Westwood. I could tell you that much, though. What a story. All right. Let's see here. All right. Someone keeps asking me about Gabe Horn. I'm not going to lie and say I have a ton of Gabe Horn thoughts here at 9:20 Eastern on I'm familiar with JC Horn. I'm excited about him. Gabe Horn, is this a real person? Is there like a huge coaching candidate that I'm just not familiar with? Is Gabe Horn a real person? I feel like the chat, you guys are screwing with me. You saw me. Here's the problem. Gabe Horn, unless it's the high school player that's showing up on Huddle, I think this guy's messing with me. Tell you what, I think everyone's been watching Torres have a couple swigs of Tito's, and they're messing with my head. Let's see here. Jeff Brom. Listen, I agree with DeVille here. I don't think Jeff Brom's going anywhere. I think Jeff Brom is happy at Louisville. He might get a big raise out of this, but I don't think he's going anywhere. Any other questions, any super chats that I missed? We will get to some super chats. By the way, I'll tell you this. Let's go through some of your other questions. Do me a quick favor, by the way. Make sure that you are this is actually a good point by Stimpy. So Stimpy brings up a good point. He said, stop trying to steal other schools' coaches and go hire the next up-and-coming coach. I do think I was watching Mississippi State the other day. And I know Mississippi State has not won an SEC game, but I think like Mississippi State is the kind of school that could have gone with like the Jimbo Fisher, Coach O, retread guy just to do it. And they went with the young guy. And I do think there's something to, if I was hiring a coach, I almost would go with the unknown. Because look at all the young guys that are having success. Marcus Freeman had never been a head coach. I know these are good situations they walked into, but Marcus Freeman, Dan Lanning, again, we're going to have John Summerall on the show later this week. I mean, these are guys that kind of, I say this with college basketball all the time, but it's like John Shire, Todd Golden, these college basketball coaches, like, you know, they need to make college football work for them. And so I do think there's something to, it's almost like A&M when they tried to hire Mark Stoops versus Mike Elko. It's like Mike Elko has to make it work because Mike Elko, you know, next 30 years, you know, Mike Elko hasn't made his $100 million. And so he's got to make it work where Brian Kelly's kind of on, you know, final couple holes of the career. And it's like, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So I would go with the young guy. You know, but if you're LSU, I mean, can you really go with the super inexperienced coach? I just don't know. A couple quick things. By the way, this is what I need people to do here. This is what I need you guys to do this for me. First of all, this is what I need you to do. I'm going to drop the my pod of my Fox Sports Radio pod. Okay, so I do Fox Sports Radio every Saturday night, talking Fox. What the heck? What the damn hell? Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. Do me a favor here. I'm going to drop my Fox Sports Radio podcast. Just download the show. I need the bosses to be like, you know what? Torres is the freaking man. I'm going to give this dude a promotion, okay? So this is what I need you to do. Just download the show. I'll be honest. I don't really care if you listen. Just download it. I appreciate everybody's support. We need another, there's 293 people in the chat right now. I need 293 downloads. Just download it, click it, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Just show the world that you support Torres, basically, for lack of a better term. Also, I will note, we're going to get out of here. What was I going to say? Luke Fickell to Kentucky, somebody says. I don't think Luke Fickell to Kentucky is going to happen. But I'll tell you what. Some of these people, come on, man. This is a family show. We already talked about Hugh Janus, and now we got another name in the chat that Noah is promoting. Guys, we gotta get out of here. It's 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. Y'all are acting a fool. That's what I need you to do. Make sure you're subscribed. That's one. We are at, let's see here. We are at almost 63,800 subscribers. There is no reason that we should not be to 64,000 by the end of the week. And I'll be transparent. There's no reason that we should not be to 70,000 by the end of the year. So make sure you're subscribed. If you have somebody that loves college football, loves college basketball, they need to be subscribed to the show. Put on the notifications. And also make sure you're subscribed because we're going live here pretty much 24 hours. This just be a 20, you know, like all these 24-hour news networks, that's what this is, only it's just me, solo. It's so funny, right? On3 has 75 different people doing content. ESPN has 75 people doing content. Torres Media's got one person with one producer. Producer Matt crushes. So make sure you're subscribed. By the way, we do have a membership platform. If you want to support the show, you can be a member, $4.99 a month. Helps us grow the channel, helps us travel. We're going to be getting to some games, maybe some college football stadiums before the end of the year, certainly college basketball. All you got to do, click join on the homepage. We would appreciate your support there. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Take It to the House says Uranus will be the next head coach at LSU. That's if Hugh Janus doesn't get it first. People are promoting Mark Stoops for the job. Goodness gracious. This chat is off the charts. Should we just keep the chat going? Screw it. What is it? 10 o'clock on a Sunday. Let's. You know what? I'll tell you what. It's 9:26 Eastern time. I'm going to give you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. My barber should be fired. Here's the thing. I don't have gel in my hair. That's the problem. For those who missed it, I just came from Outback Steakhouse. I did not plan on going live today. I'm wearing my shout out to John Tyson Chicken. Let's Bendover is apparently a candidate. I think Bendover is a candidate along with Hugh Janus and a couple other candidates. You guys are on fire today. Blind Vegan says, I subscribed even though you called me blind. Well, bro, I mean, your handle is Blind Vegan. All I said was you need to get some glasses and eat some red meat. That's all I'm saying. Any other questions? Screw it. I got nowhere else to be. You know, let me say this real quick. My buddy Ryan Fowler, who hosts Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa, basically asked me this question. He said, when is Ryan Grubb going to be a candidate for some of these jobs? I said, Ryan, keep your mouth shut. This is Ryan Fowler. I said, Ryan Grubb's a dog, dude. If I was one of these schools, I don't think he's the fit for LSU. I'll tell you what, like what job I think Ryan Grubb, I think I would make the call. Now, another school that I don't know who's actually making the hire. Like if you're Kentucky and let's say Will Stein, who's from Louisville, somehow doesn't get the job or doesn't want the job. And maybe John Summerall is not the right fit, whatever. I just bring it up because Ryan Grubb, elite offense at Washington, elite offense at Alabama. By the way, Alabama kind of a train wreck. Kalen DeBoer kind of a train wreck without Ryan Grubb. Now, the thing with Ryan Grubb, I'll say this. I don't know, like, how many jobs he would be interested in, right? So when Kalen DeBoer left Washington, Ryan Grubb made it very clear that that was a job that he was interested in. So I just bring it up because, like, how many tiers down would you have? Like, would Ryan Grubb rather be the OC at Alabama and kick it with Kalen DeBoer and win 90% of his games? Or how badly does he want to be a head coach? Like, if, he's from Iowa, right? So if Matt Campbell takes the Penn State job, would he take the Iowa State job? Is that too low for him? Is the Kentucky job too low? Like, I just think he's an interesting name that I don't know enough about, like what kind of jobs would interest him. So I think that's an interesting name. Drop your questions. Let's get to, let's have a little fun here. I got a little Tito's in me. Let's have some fun. James Franklin at LSU. We already talked about that. John Summerall to LSU. Make sure to go back and listen. We talked about that. We got gel in the hair. What is this, 1989? I don't know. What is it? Do people not wear gel in their hair? I mean, Todd Golden wears gel in his hair. He just won a national championship. Mark Pope has no hair. John Shire wears gel in his hair. Mark Pope doesn't. He has no hair. Mark Stoops has no hair either. This is a no gel year in the SEC. This is a great point. This carousel makes Petrino a sure thing. Petrino's an interesting character. That loss to Auburn was just brutal. That loss to Auburn was so interesting from the perspective of, like, what does it do for Hugh? It certainly kept Hugh Freeze's job. Now, Kentucky fans, you have an assignment. Is Hugh Freeze – I don't know. I'm not even going to talk negatively. But I do think it makes it interesting. Pat Turnbow says, what hair? Oh, this is the one I want to get to. Will Stein to Kentucky. I mean, let's make it happen. Listen, I want Kentucky to be good, and Kentucky has the quarterback. I said this on the show this morning. Kentucky finally has a real quarterback. And Mark Stoops' defense is what's letting him down? Unacceptable. All right, a couple more. We'll go ahead and get out of here. Any more questions? Oh, y'all crack me up tonight. Hugh Janus is a candidate at LSU. All right. Chat's getting a little styling. Chat's getting a little quiet. Man, that was fun, man. That was fun. Tell you what, I think we're going to get out of here. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. We're closing in on 63,000, almost 64,000 subscribers. Monster night, by the way. I got so much content that I'm not even going to run tonight because Brian Kelly just got fired at freaking LSU. Unbelievable. We're going to get out of here. Drop your thoughts, drop your questions, drop your comments, and we'll be back on tomorrow. By the way, how fitting on this. John Summerall, Tulane head coach, joins us on Monday night. We did interview him last week. I'll be transparent. But we did ask him about other coaching jobs. How does he handle it? What is he looking for? What would it take for him to leave? So you're going to want to check that out. I'm going to go. Thank you for your support. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Make sure you do that. If you want to be a member, just click join. I would appreciate that as well. That's it. Also, shout out to the video that I just posted in which I said, what would it take for Brian Kelly to be fired? Oh, I don't know. Just a normal Sunday. All right. I'm going to get out of here. Luke is a 24-hour listener, was on with me at 11 a.m. Eastern time tonight, and it's almost 11 p.m. Eastern. So, Luke, you're what they call a P1 listener. We appreciate your support, and we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel Hates My Voice. JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back. Aaron Torres Pod. Tomorrow with Summerall. Who the hell knows? We're going to be going live probably twice a day, every day from now until the end of